Ambiguity, no noise. Let's come straight to the point. It was supposed to be the war that we had won. It was supposed to be a period of reconciliation and new beginnings. It was supposed to be renewal of old civilizational ties. After the decade or so of dark days of Punjab terrorism, India had settled the K question for good, or so we thought. Now it appears that what seemed to be a period of peace to us may have been a period of regrouping, re strategizing, and rearming. So called Khalistan 2.0 has captured headlines again, and once again, we are faced with a question on what is Sikh identity and why is there a conflict between Hindu identity and Sikh identity? Is there a conflict or is the conflict manufactured? All you have to do is travel through Punjab, like I do, and see the cultural ties between people, between ordinary people. And it will seem to you that the conflict is manufactured. If it is manufactured, then who are the people who are talking about separatism and fanning it, and more importantly, funding it? State capacity of India today is far bigger than it was in 80s. So there is never any question about what will Indian government do about terrorism on Indian soil. However, the question is about separatist tendencies being fanned constantly because that threatens to tear India's soul. To talk about all this, I have with me Puneet Sahani. Those of you who are active on social media must have seen his very powerful, logical, and scholarly interventions on Sikh identity issues and what he calls de-Hinduization of Sikhi. Puneet Sahani is an expert on Punjab, Khalistan terrorism, and evolution of Sikh identity. Welcome to the show, Puneet.
Jai Ma Bharti, thank you for inviting me, Sunanda.
Thank you. Thank you. Puneet, I want to give you a bit of a short story. In 2004, I was invited for a wedding to Toronto, Mississauga, to be precise. And you know, there's a lot of Desi population in Mississauga, Punjabi population. I had gone for a personal visit, and it was a wedding that I had to attend. And I remember from the airport straight, we went to a Indian restaurant, and I had just come back from India, and I had traveled through the length and breadth of Punjab. This is 2004. And when I entered the Indian restaurant, on one side of the entrance, you know how there are newspapers, community newspapers that are kept there, and they're not, you don't buy them; they're free for people to pick up. And I picked up a newspaper, and it said Khalistan Times. This is 2004, and I remember I laughed out loudly. I said, "Where is this Khalistan? Is it here in Mississauga? Where have you bought land for this? And if it's true that there is Khalistan here, because there is going to be no Khalistan anywhere else, and if there is Khalistan here, do tell me how to visit it, because I would like to apply for a visa just for the, I was making jokes about it. I was making fun about it. And I had my Canadian hosts, I was telling them that I've just come back from Punjab. People in Punjab have moved on. They have moved on from the dark days. Punjabis in general tend to be very positive, very forward-looking people. So they don't like to dwell on the painful past. So they were moving on. So I was telling, on a serious note, I was telling my host, I remember, that the only Khalistan that will ever be is in the minds of these people. It's nostalgia. In 2023, do you think I was wrong? Do you think the Indian establishment was wrong? Because that was the general consensus in India also, that we have put the K question behind us. What do you think?
Okay, so let's break it down. So when you talk about 2004, so the good thing about technology is you can search. So the thing is, in 2003, so Bhindranwala died 84, right? Till 2003, there was no picture. And in 2003, these Akalis and this SGPC brings a demand that they want to put a portrait of Bhindranwala inside the Golden Temple. And there is a lot of upheaval about it. And, of course, Congress opposes it. The Akali supported, BJP is in the middle. And if you see what they're saying, he's saint for us. He died here, let us put us here and everything. And at that time, so you just have to go for 2004 news reportage in India. You don't have to believe what Puneet Sahani is saying. And everybody who is writing there, I think Khalistanis are a clown. So, for example, I think it was, I forgot the name, but if you Google, it is 2003. There is somebody who interviews Bhindranwale's son. And you see, he's such a sorry character. He runs this property dealer. Nobody asks him, and he's running around like it is a clown show. And Manjeet Sehgal, I think, has written that this guy who printed this passport and currency of Khalistan from Canada, his name was Jagjit Singh Chauhan.
Yes.
So the Indian government said, okay, come back. You are a poor fellow. And I think Manjeet Sehgal wrote it. He's outside the Gurudwara and he's like, please let me give a speech. And the Sevadar is like, get off from here. Don't cause any nuisance. So they were treated like rubbish in the same period. Right. Now, when you say about Canada, so Canada has many reasons. So the thing is, all these Khalistanis, they basically have moved there, this terrorist, and they haven't. And Canada, of course, they had this 85. But, it's a country built on like gentleman's agreement. They never assumed this, this violent criminals and, like people most dishonest would actually, and they have basically infiltrated their system. And, even and how they have captured Gurdwaras is basically through violence and thuggery. I give you an example, again, don't believe what Puneet Sahani says. So in 1990, I think it's 1997 about, there was like, a big fight about control of Gurdwara. It was Guru Nanak Sikh Temple in Surrey, right? And if you do, I think
Surrey, British Columbia,
right? British, and I think it is by Rediff. So if you do, that would be. So at that time, there was a lot of fights for the control of Gurdwaras, and there was moderates and this Khalistanis, right? And because of this fight, the British Columbia court got involved. Like, what the hell is happening? Because they had to send policemen, they had to send dogs, they had to send helicopter over the Gurdwara. And they were like, what the hell is happening? And they were like, for election. And the Supreme Court of British Columbia said, okay, we are going to do the election now to figure out what it is. And you imagine the Khalistanis got the Jathedar of the SGPC, which is basically the Roman Catholic Church of the Sikhs, to issue fatwas in favor of the Khalistanis, right? And how many people participated, Sunanda? Believe me, in one Gurdwara election, like I'm saying, one Gurdwara election, about 40,000 people voted. 40,000.
Wow.
And to give you an example, if you are from Delhi, an average SGPC, like when you have elections, Delhi is a very important, there are so many Sikh shrines and all these things.
Yes.
I'm talking about today. This happened 20 years ago. Today, if there is a Gurdwara election in Delhi, which has like 4,000 or 5,000 people vote. But 40,000 people. And what was the result of this Gurdwara election? First to last, Khalistanis lost the election. First to last. And in the losing was this Kundan Sajjan, the father of Harjeet Sajjan. Yeah. So these people lose Gurdwara election when the court intervenes. And when they lose, people also went, what do you think about these terrorist portraits that you have put here in the Gurdwara? And they say, yeah, it should not be here, but somebody have put us, and what can we do? So again, it's basically utter criminality. And Terry Molesky has basically done, like how they get money. To give you another example, like how they basically work is like Gurdwaras. And there's Tom Blackwell who has done, it's basically business for them. Yeah. So these people are fraudsters.
So do you think there is any connection between Khalistan 1.0 and Khalistan 2.0 as the media has called it? Or should we even call it 2.0 at all?
No, there is to be worried, because the thing is this generation that is born after. So if you see, actually, even in this generation, people don't vote for Khalistanis. So the thing is, when you have like violent criminals, like for example, we are in America, you see like, there is Italian mafia. You can't speak against the mob if you're living in the neighborhood, right? Yeah. But so people can only express when you have a secret ballot. Yeah. And the thing about votes is also, election is because you get a representative sample, not the most outrageous voice climbing to the top, right? And I'm just saying, you look at how they have voted. The Punjabis have always rejected the Khalistanis because they have suffered on their chest what these animals have done to them. I give you another example. In recent election in Punjab, this after all this, they had vitiated the atmosphere about this, farmers' protest and something. The Khalistani Simranjit Singh Mann, right? How much vote he got? On an average seat on the Punjab constituency, 0.8, with all this Canada supporting him, right? Yeah. And how much did BJP get? It was fighting without the Akalis alone, right? So BJP, which is a Hindutva party, got 2.4% vote. So on an average, it got 3 times as many votes as this Khalistanis.
So
But
Simranjit Singh Maan, you're saying he won the election in Sangrur this time?
no, he lost the election in Vidhan Sabha.
Vidhan Sabha.
Right. And after a few months, like they said, okay, Aam Aadmi Party, and now it's distancing with Khalistanis, let's give a chance because we don't want to go to Akalis. The Congress has self-destructed. The BJP is not a force. So let's give to Aam Aadmi Party. But when they saw basically what this Bhagwant Mann is doing, so they wanted to defeat Bhagwant Mann.
Yeah.
And Simranjit Singh Maan was the candidate there. Because, this, so he basically won the Lok Sabha. But he actually, few months before, he had lost his own seat. He couldn't win even a Vidhan Sabha.
Right.
And so it has to be seen in perspective. But the thing is with social media, so whatever nuisance they were doing in Mississauga, now they can do it in Punjab and they can create upheaval. This is
so your thing is, and I agree with you when you say that, because I said that in my introduction too, Punjabis have never accepted Khalistanis. And even now when I go there, because I travel through Punjab a lot and I have traveled through Punjab, you are saying that Punjabis have rejected Khalistanis and they have rejected them again and again and again. Yet we do see things like in 2014, you mentioned about Bhindranwale, memorial that has
2003.
2003, you mentioned that the thing had started. In 2014, they were actually successful in building a memorial inside Golden Temple. So who are these people then? If Punjabis have rejected terrorism, if Punjabis have rejected separatism, then who are these people who have actually succeeded in putting this memorial inside Golden Temple?
So few things. In 2003, it always starts as a probing mission.
Correct.
So, and they expand. They put small thing here, then it becomes bigger, then it becomes like a full-fledged thing. So the nonsense started in 2003, and now they're even putting terrorists inside there. So if you look at SGPC is not. So, if you go to the Sikh identity, and now basically connect. So this was created by the British. So SGPC stands for Shiromani Gurdwara Prabandhak Committee. Now committee is a Punjabi word or a Hindi word or a Braj word. We have word Samiti. So this was created by the British. Then Gurdwara Prabandhan is basically means temple management, right? So this was basically a temple management board created by the British. And see, it's fascinating why, the self-identity of the Sikhs was to fight for dharma. And we'll show, and no part of India suffered the worst excesses of invasions than Punjab.
Correct.
So we all our teachings were like this. But when the British incentivized, so the thing is, when you get quota, right? So who wants to, for example, you give Dalits the quota. Now, okay, there may be some enlightened person who will say this is not good for the society, but who wants to let go of the quota benefits, right? So it was incentive to basically expand your numbers, and B, also control of it. So it's so fascinating, Sunanda, if you go, and this is happening for 100 years. So when they had to say, for example, who are Sikhs, then they allow everybody to identify themselves as Sikhs, because the larger the number, the bigger they can ask for share. Let's say we are 15%, give us 20%. So anybody, even Sunanda Vashisht says, I revere the Gurus, I call myself Sikh, very welcome. But when you have to control the Gurdwaras, then they make narrower definition. No, you have to give the 5Ks. No, you can't do this. So they have basically disenfranchising the people. So it's basically, running like some Khap Panchayat. And, they say, if say, for example, if Sunanda Vashisht says, what will be Hinduism? And says, okay, I am the Jathedar, and 3 of my friends are going to vote for me, are going to decide whether I'm the Jathedar or not. So, of course, you control it. So, it's not the average Punjabi who's voting for SGPC. SGPC is basically the root of all evil and all this problem. This is actually my thesis. And I have dug out from 100 years, people think Mrs. Gandhi miscalculated, some say Bhindranwala, and all this. My actually research has basically taken me the roots of this, Muslim League type politics is basically set in the 1920s, and SGPC is formed in the 1920s, and it is basically acting out like that. And because it was only a temple management board, but nobody reads, and they make outrageous claims, and people are like, okay, maybe must be true, they control the Golden Temple. So they have just created falsified entire history, falsified entire Gurbani, and just they go in self-preservation.
Yeah.
So one last point I'll make, it might help you to explain, like we are in US, right? So we had like ACLU, right? To protect, like, like against racism, somebody would fire like, so at one point it was like this, now it's this organization has gone in self-preservation. So now they are not cases. So they forcefully keep finding issues of racism. Like, I don't know, we both live in America. I've never seen a white person use N-word. Like I have seen, everybody else I have seen. But the thing is, now you can basically get a white person fire like this, like just to do it. So they basically, the institute goes in self-preservation. So now their whole rise on the eighth ray is, we are a separate nation. We are a separate people. If they go like we are the same thing, then what is the need for SGPC? Dissolve it. So this institute, this very corrosive institute, has gone in self-preservation. It's like the ISI. It's destroying the Pakistan, but it's expanding it. It's going in self-preservation. Then what is good for its people?
Yeah. So you are saying that in last 100 years, this whole issue about separate Sikh identity, which is in any conflict with anybody in India, is just a creation of last 100 years or so. Before that, there were no such issues. And you say that it is the British government who followed the divide and rule, that this was their doing, and we still are, in a way, suffering from that. What they did to India. So what we will talk about Sikh identity in detail. But before that, I would like you to talk through us a slideshow that we prepared. So could we please have the first slide, and Puneet, you walk us through the slides, and after that I'll come back and we'll ask you questions. Can we have the first slide, please?
So, Sunanda, this is basically, like India is very large, but this small area that has basically 50% of the population, right? This area in red. And you see Punjab is at the forefront. This is what India is now. And the reason is, like, this area is entirely flat, right? So like from Punjab to Kolkata, the average altitude changes like, I think, like a stair step in a kilometer. And we were enslaved. We had to suffer because we didn't have a war horse, and of course like cannon technology as well. So this is the contribution of the gurus. Like the Punjab is at the worst, and the border of India starts where like the gurus preach dharma and where they were active, and that's where the border is. Otherwise it would have been further in. So let's move to the next. And you see exactly like this, like what I was saying. So from Karachi to Lahore and Lahore to Kolkata, it's the same flat thing. But we have lost this Karachi to Lahore area. Yeah. So you see all these people fought, and like they are like great. For me, they are like Devtas, Maharana Pratap and Shivaji Maharaj. But you look at the terrain they are fighting. So if you're fighting from like an altitude, of course, you can defend yourself. You can create, Chittor, you can create Pratapgarh and Narsingh. But what do you do in Punjab? Yeah. In Punjab, you basically have no defenses. Like, it was the same, like Zulus were great warriors. Yeah. But when the whites, they went to Africa, they can come and do whatever, but they're just going to shoot you because they had superior technology. So in war, it's all about terrain and technology. And as anybody can see, no place had a worse terrain than Punjab. Like, you cannot create any fort here. And in that thing, so the gurus also came. It's a geography shapes your history. And history is like what you're also trying to do. It's like no man lives in an isolation. So let's move to the next. So now, like, I don't know that you did, Amritpal was saying like Murti Puja. So Sunanda, this is Shaligram, right?
Yes.
So this is Shaligram coming from Nepal for Ram Mandir.
Yes.
Right. And okay, let's move to the next slide now. Now, this is the earliest artifacts of Guru Nanak Dev. And this black stone I will leave for the Khalistanis and Akalis. Let's see if there is any person who can explain what the black stone is. But the white stone against is Shaligram. That is the earliest artifact of Guru Nanak Dev. And go to the next. So can you read this line that I have like highlighted?
I'm trying to read. Let me see. I have it in one moment. I will just read it.
It's also in Devanagari above. So maybe read in Devanagari.
Such is the Saligram Hamari Seva. Such is the Saligram, the stone idol which I serve.
Actually, this is written in Granth Sahib by Guru Arjan Dev, the guy who has compiled the Granth.
Yeah.
This is not the word of any, like, what do you say, any Bhatt, you know, and I told you, Bhatt are 1/3 of the people who have contributed to the Granth Sahib, like Kashmiri Pandits, right? These are not of Bhagats. These are the words of Gurus themselves, and this is the word of the Guru who has created the Granth Sahib.
Yeah.
And he's saying, I worship the Shaligram because they were Vaishnavas.
Yes.
You read anything, it's just like Vaishnav, Vaishnav, Vaishnav. Okay, let's move to the next one. Now, again, so this is from Maharaja Ranjit Singh's time. So, you know, this is Guru Nanak's wedding. And it says, Guru Nanak fere lene nu bedi mein aaya. Like Guru Nanak comes to Vedi. So the, like, you know, and if you read, you know, they have such falsified history because, you know, to be separate from Hindu brings incentives. And now it has become like an article of faith. So if you just read, how did Gurus get married? So you will only go to SGPC sources and they say, we rejected the Hindu rituals. And, you know, like all these things, you know, we married by separate some Anand. It's all nonsense. But, you know, we have documentation from Maharaja Ranjit Singh. So he married in Jwalaji by Vedic rites.
Yeah.
So, and I have like the person he married with, you know, with the royal house of Kangra. I'm connected with them. So they say, no, like Maharaja Ranjit Singh was influenced by like Brahmins. So I basically posted this and it went viral on Twitter. And I challenged SGPC. I have basically gone into the Sikh sources, like this pre-British sources, and they are all, what do they say? That the Guru is not Guru Nanak. Maybe the ritual didn't evolve. Up to Guru Gobind Singh, they all married through, what do you say, pleasing the Navgrah. You know, and it's not the same as the planets. Navgrah are Hindu astrological deities.
Yes.
You know, and then they basically, they do Ahvan of Ganesh, and then they do around sacred Agni. And they have basically, and you know, it's over. And you know, when they started to bring about, they wanted to separate all this thing from the British. Actually, the Sikh scholars of that time, you know, have gone into their document. They protested because they said, you know, like, when you go Agni, you basically take vows in front of the Agni that this is my wife and I'm going to. It's like when you circle around the book, this is what you do in Gurdwara.
Yeah.
You know, you go with the feeling of brother and sister, not husband and wife. So what you are doing is a Mahapap. And they couldn't find, when this British started this mischief, they passed this law that Sikhs should have a separate marriage right in Britain because they had no support in Punjab. And in Punjab, they couldn't find even in Amritsar a single Granthi who would solemnize their marriage. But now, you know, this is what they have done. Like people like, oh, my parents have been married like this. My sister has been married like this. They have just created fraud and, you know, we are doing it. So anyways, you know, like this is how our Gurus used to marry. Let's move to the next one. And, you know, so again, they say Murti Puja. Now, again, what I'm saying, this, so, you know, it's all a question of emphasis, right? So the Gurus, especially in Guru Nanak, you also see of Adi Shankara, which is basically Nirgun Brahm, which is Advait. But if you look at the Granth as a whole, you know, of course, there is emphasis on Nirgun Brahm, but it's basically what it's preaching is Vishisht Advaita of Ramanujacharya.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
You can, and you know, you just, I want to do, there are page number 1430, and you basically go on a random page, whatever number comes to your mind, let's say 380, 750, whatever. Think of a random number, go to online and read it. And don't read the English translation because it's nonsense. But read the text in Devanagari, in Hindi. And it's in Santa Bhasha, so you can understand. It's basically Kabirji's Bhasha or whatever. And I challenge you will not find a single page which does not have at least a dozen references to Vishnu.
Yeah.
Because it's basically a Vaishnav parampara. And the thing is, so, and again, you know, when they were Muslim, we couldn't create it. But when, for example, Maharaja Ranjit Singh, he created his temple. When we could do it, what did he do? Like, you would not find it anywhere. But I have basically dug out the sources that when Maharaja Ranjit Singh did this Hari Mandir, this was Golden Temple, was not Hariga Mandir.
Yeah.
And in Hariga Mandir, then they can do it because they thought the Gurus are also like avatars of Vishnu, that they have come to, you know, protect and, you know, do us. Yeah. So this is not some anybody has done. You read, if you could, this is official records that they have dug out. And nobody knows this. Please read what I've underlined.
According to a highly reliable contemporary observer, a pujari working in the Golden Temple, one of the first large idols to be installed at this premier shrine of the Sikhs was a metal casting of Guru Hargobind 1595 to 1644, gifted by the Raja of Chamba during the reign of Ranjit Singh.
So Maharaja Ranjit Singh installed an idol inside Hari Mandir.
Yeah.
So forget about what they were. There was this was or this. They basically whitewashed the entire history to become like a bootleg version of Islam.
Yeah.
Okay, move to the next one. Now again, you see, for example, this is Sarv Siddhant Chudamani, a brilliant. So like you can't see it. Like maybe you go to my Twitter. It's such a beautiful with so much detail, like this painting of Guru Nanak Dev. Now the thing is, this was done by the successor of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, his son Sher Singh of the Khalsa Raj, right? And you see, like he has a very clear Urdu Pundra, like basically a Vaishnavized tilak, and you see it. So even then, Maharaja Ranjit Singh Raj, when we had all the power, this was their understanding. So the pre-British understanding was, it's not, and everybody say, like we are all part of Sanatan. Like, what do you mean by Sanatan? Bhaiya? So Sanatan has 6 Astik Darshan, and then you have Nastik Darshan, right?
Yes.
So the Jain Buddha are in Nastik Darshan. The Sikhi is 100% Sanatan Darshan. They say like they accept all 6 schools. So Guru Nanak says, 6 ghar, 6 gur, 6 updesh, gur gur eko roop anek. So there are 6 schools, 6 gurus, and 6 messages. And all are true. It's like, the Guru manifests through different ways. So we accept all 6 Hindu Arthik Darshan. So it's not a branch. Yeah. It is pure Sanatan Dharma working in the constraints of in Punjab, and of course evolving and engaging, and like gurus are people of their time, and of course they just don't repeat everything like a parrot. So they are engaging with society and trying to guide it, but they are okay. So this is this, and move to the next one. Now again, so this is from Krishna Avatar. So this is Guru Gobind Singh's translation of so when we talked about, so when Islamic invasion came, how the dharma was protected was, temples were not. So it was basically then this bhakti parampara really like takes hold. And in all this basically, like what do you say, whether it's Advait, Vishisht Advait, Advait, they rely on 3 sources. It's called Prasthantraya, which is Brahma Sutra, and what do you say, apna Bhagavad Gita and Upanishad, right? But when you go for Vaishnav Parampara, this Bhagavad Puran becomes very important. And in Bhagavad Puran, the 10th canto or 10th skand, which is basically full of Krishna Shringar Ras and Madhurya Ras. So this is basically Guru Gobind Singh Ji's translation of Krishna Avatar, is basically translation of the 10th canto of Bhagavad Puran. But again, he's a warrior. So you see basically is Krishna Avatar, but he's praying to the Devi, and you see like Ganesh and everything here. So when he says basically, he tries to merge, it's so he's like a genius. These things have not been appreciated. These are our proudest legacy. So, he tries to, so the Shakti Parampara to fight, to do Dharam Yajna comes from Devi. And Bhakti comes from, primarily Krishna, but Vaishnava in general. And he's trying to merge these two. So he's basically sings like great poem in veneration of Krishna. When he says Krishna is also a manifestation of the Devi. So this is a Krishna Avatar folio, it's so beautifully done. This was a very, very expensive proposition in that time.
Very beautiful.
And let's move to the next. And this is basically, now they say Ram is basically somebody who is merged with this. So this is Guru Angad, who is the successor of Guru Nanak. So if somebody would have understood what Guru Nanak wanted to do, was his successor.
Correct.
And this what is like page number 469. And can you please read what it has written to me?
Yeah. I'm trying to read from my this thing. Ek Krisan Sarab Deva Dev Devana Atma Atma Vasudevasya Je ke Jane Bhe Nanak ka Dasu hai Soi Niranjan Dev.
So now the Krishna is basically the Devas of Deva and essence of all Devas.
Yeah.
And if they say like Krishna is not your Muralidhar, then he basically says Vasudev. Then maybe who else can be Vasudev? And he says he is the real person that who understands the subtle detail of Vasudev. And Nanak, he's basically all gurus, like subsequent gurus. They write, when they write in Granth, in the pen name of Nanak.
Right.
Like, because they have also merged with Nanak. The Jains also do it. They are only distinguished by the vehicle under them. So he says, so he's basically, Guru Angad is right. I am the slave. I'm the das. I am the servant of like somebody who has understood this mystery. So the gurus say themselves, they write with so much humility, and they have created, like these wild creatures. This is, can this be anything with Krishna? This is Vasudev, and Guru saying Guru is a slave of such people.
Yeah.
And how can this be another religion?
Yeah.
Okay, move to the next. Now you see like what they have done with Gurbani. So the thing is, there is a very, very famous episode, again from Bhagavad Puran, of Gajendra Moksha. In case people don't know, there is this, in Trikuta, there is this elephant king, whose name is Gajraj. And, his short story, is taken by the crocodile, and he tries to free himself and doesn't. And in the end, he basically submits and cries to the Vishnu, who comes on Garuda and, saves him. And this cry, which is like Gajendra Stuti, is like in the beginning of Vishnu Sahasranam, right? And it's not this Guru Tegh Bahadur. He's like, for me, he's my favorite guru. But many gurus have written about Gajendra Moksha. So the thing is, for example, he says, and this is when, this is happening of the persecution of Kashmiri Pandits. So he says, Bal chutkyo, bandhan pade, kachuna ho to paye. Like my strength. Okay, so basically I put the wrong thing. So this was the next line, but I'll tell you what it says. So it says, Bal chutkyo bandhan pade, kachuna ho to paye. Like I've been put in chains, my strength has been forsaken, and there is no way. And then he says, Ke Nanak ab ot hari ki, gajjiyo ho sahay. That, oh Nanak, the Hari will help me. He helped Gajraj.
Yeah.
Now if you go to the translation online, they have translated, oh, save me like the Lord saved the elephant. So does it make any sense?
Everything is in your hands. Yeah.
Yeah. So he says basically, okay, like I have no strength. Lord save me like you saved the elephant. So what they have done is basically broken people from their spiritual. Nothing makes sense. So for example, go next.
Next, please.
So this is basically what this Gajendra Moksha episode. This is a 1500-year-old, and I think this is at Dashavatara temple.
Right.
So this is around 500 AD. So this is what he's saying, and what nonsense they are writing. So it doesn't make anything. So by you connect people to spiritual roots, what is the metaphorical meaning? Then of course nobody is interested, and they want to go wherever, to Canada or to Hallelujah or something, because nobody has any, forget intelligence or a culture or scholarship. That's always very restricted, but they're just completely disconnected with who they are.
Yeah.
Right. And
do we play the video now?
Okay, maybe the video is 2 minutes. Maybe we save towards the end.
Wait, towards the end. Okay. Right. All right. We'll play that in the end. Thank you so much, Puneet. That has really no questions are left after that. But I still want to ask you a few things that are on my mind and on the mind of our viewers. This face of Sikhism that I am seeing, I have lived a few years on this planet. I don't remember this face of Sikhism even when I was a child, because suddenly I see Abramization of Sikhi. For example, somebody, a mentally challenged person, or even if a person is not mentally challenged, he happens to be in the sanctum sanctorum, or he happens to touch the divine scriptures, which we all respect, and he just happens to touch. He's a child, he's 14, 15-year-old. There is no rule of law. The person is immediately killed. I mean, we have seen that happening inside the holiest of Sikh shrines. How is it possible that there is gurus who stood for dharma, gurus who stood for fairness, gurus who stood for justice, and gurus, most of all, who stood for kindness? How has Sikhi developed into this sort of framework where there is no kindness, where there is a very Abrahamic, which doesn't belong to this soil, where there is no question of asking questions, and where the only, you've put in stuff like blasphemy and sacrilege, and the only answer to blasphemy and sacrilege is death. I mean, who is benefiting from this? Ordinary Sikhs cannot be benefiting from this.
No, several things. So actually, Sunanda, like I have basically, studied not just Punjab. If you actually study all cultures, especially like Islamic cultures, there is a great book by Bernard Lewis as well, What Went Wrong. And he basically shows whenever you have actually media. So forget, this social media, which is like amplifies. Even with the printing press, when it comes, it actually leads to radicalization first, in the first phase, because the outrages gets like most eyeballs and something like that. But what you're saying is actually surprising to you, not to me, who has like clinically studied the Punjab problem. The thing is when you do criminals, and this is what they had done in Punjab in 80s and 90s as well. And they had completely demoralized the state, like what you saw in Ajnala. So nobody is like, nobody has a suicide wish. Everybody has a family. But when the government basically shows any resolve and, commitment to fight, then you can say, okay, the ordinary people will also start speaking against this. This is exactly what used to be in UP. This mafias and bahubalis used to run a reign and, like just murder anybody and do whatever. And the ordinary people were terrified. But like till the government shows actually spine. So, like the Punjab is like, I would request if you go to my Twitter, there is a link to my Telegram channel. And in that, I've put like, 2 mini books by KPS Gill, Endgame in Punjab and, like Nights of Falsehood. Brilliant books. Like you can read both of them in a few hours, start at a night and finish. And he basically explains. So they have done like more depraved acts actually during the Punjab terrorism. And they kept doing it and the state was in complete silence. Till, like Gill basically came up and, I can give you like most of the people who actually fought them and defeated these animals were basically Sikhs themselves.
Yeah.
But you have to show them that you are ready for a fight. Right now, there is not, okay, there is a criminal. There is no government which is like ready to enforce the rule of law. And the government is basically appeasing the criminal. So you have to see it as criminal. And this happens everywhere. So, for example, I live in New York. This happens. It used to be the Italian community as well. And, there was actually a Jewish mafia as well at one time, like Orthodox Jewish mafia as well. I forgot the name of that person. And, like wherever they happen, the local community is, of course, the worst victim. Yeah. So the government has no, like will to like, implement the rule of law, and the criminals have done. And, this is, we can do a separate episode of like the atrocities there. And, Sunanda, one last point, also like how many people you said like in 80s, 90s, I tell you, there are 3 and all 3 are alive. And of course, I take a line and, so they are politically, so they would not come. But, 3 great researchers of Guru Nanak Dev University, which is the premier university of Punjab. In 1990s, they had gone to Majha, and militancy was basically restricted to Majha.
Yeah. So like, just to tell people, there are 3 regions we sort of divide Punjab in. There is Doaba, which is the Jalandhar, and correct me if I'm wrong, Puneet, there is that Doaba region. Then there is Majha, which is right in the thing, and there is Malwa. Right. So Majha region is what you were talking about, is where most of the Gurdwaras are.
No, let me explain, please.
Okay.
So like Majha is like this smallest region that is bordering Pakistan. And basically, so Pakistan was infiltrating, and through Majha, you actually have the route from Pathankot to Jammu and Kashmir. So Majha for all practice, and I'm giving you how militancy affected like 5% of the police district. Like there were, I think, like 267 police districts at that time, and just 13 police districts that were in Majha region that had like 2/3 of the casualties. So basically, like it was so like this militancy was. So they basically went to villages like this 3, and it is the greatest field study I've read anywhere. These 3 professors went to villages of Majha, and everybody will speak to a professor. They didn't send a research journalist, and they talked to people, and they went to thanas, they went to police stations and talk, and they create a very, very careful field study. Who was the militant, where they come from, what was their land holding, how many family members, and whatever. And it was very fascinating, what the background is. But even in that time, I tell you, like the Majha, the most militancy infected region, at that time. So they asked people like, have you joined Khalistan movement? So, and what was the reason? So the people who filled for Bhindranwale, for Khalistan, for Blue Star, for Delhi 84 pogrom, these are the 4 big reasons you will think. Together they made for 10%. 40% said Shokiya Tor se, for fun. So they basically bring out the average age, when the police started fighting back, the average age of a militant was 1 year. But in that 1 year, he committed 50 rapes. So you had access to 50 women in that 1 year. So that's why people also, so they basically completely prove, and this is what the villagers say. कोई भी खाते पीते घर था नहीं सी, मंडीर रल गई सी जी, कोई सारे ऐसी, मतलब nobody was from a good family. They got, fell in the spell of bad boys. So they basically done of that time. Even imagine Blue Star has happened, Delhi has happened. Even at that time, this was basically simple criminality. And this is what Gell kept explaining. He said, this is no center state problem. This is no, religious problem. It's basically Jatwad and its criminality, and you deal with them like criminals. And this is what he said. He was brought in 84 after Blue Star. And, he kept repeating, and the government started, no, we will win hearts and minds, and we will resolve, and we will give feedback. They killed 20,000 Punjabis in that time. And when he finally got, Bien Singh came and he said, okay, we do it. In 6 months, he wiped out the militancy. And Sunanda, one last point, if you actually see, for example, you go to Uppsala Institute, they have war studies there. So, again, the VP Singh is basically who basically really shoots up the Punjab killings and also this Kashmir militancy. At the same time, when he releases this Mufti Saeed's daughter. And that also has effect in Punjab. But if you look at the figures when this militancy burst up, Punjab killings used to be more than Kashmir.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that because I've studied Kashmir terrorism so closely. I know that Punjab killings used to be more than Kashmir. This is absolutely right. I can vouch for this.
Right. And then he just made it zero. There is no record in history of this.
Yeah.
And, to take another example, you say Sri Lanka, which also had kind of the civil war. So, and, it had, Punjab always had this conflict and, Pakistan was supporting. Sri Lanka, they had no history of, this Buddhist or, Tamil conflict. There is some politician who started. 80,000 people died in that militancy.
Yeah.
So, when we say 20,000, of course, 1 life is too much. But it was Gill who basically, when you have this Khana Jangi or civil war, it doesn't stop. It's still going on in Afghanistan. It just continues on. It's still kind of going on in Kashmir. Things have gotten better when Pakistan has basically gone bankrupt.
Yeah.
And you see, so what we, it's so horrific. And also that's the reason it was so horrific. People don't talk about it. So, they just have one-sided propaganda of these young kids, of this Bhindranwale. They think, he was some rebel who stood up to the state. They never knew what he said. And I don't blame them. I came from an engineering school. In our most dorms had Che Guevara posters. We don't know what an evil man he was.
What he stood for. Yeah.
Right. And now I can send you, I have so many messages. Sometimes I post on Twitter, it's like, Sanjeev really said it. We never knew he gave such kind of speeches or he was such an evil or a coward man. But it is the failure of the Indian state. We have this expression, mitti pao te agge badho. Throw some soil and just move on. Just move on and live for another day. But the thing is, we have to clinically study, what happened. It was so horrific. What happened in Punjab was in no means less than what you saw in Kashmir files.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There are a lot of forces because I study geopolitics and I would like to frame this debate a little bit in the sense of geopolitics. There is a lot of interest in a lot of countries around us who are interested in destabilizing India. And Pakistan has funded, Khalistanis. Pakistan has funded terrorism in Kashmir. We know that. Pakistan now has gone bankrupt and they don't have money to buy atta also. Where is the money coming from right now? Is it totally the diaspora money that is funding, all this revival, so to speak, in Punjab? Because I see, and we will talk about Amritpal a little bit, the new phase, and we'll talk about media also. Media hasn't been covering itself in glory the way they sort of glorify him by calling him another Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale and all that. They're glorifying him. They shouldn't be. This is exactly what media did with Bhindranwale as well. Interviews upon interviews and interviews upon interviews, and giving him that kind of platform that he did not deserve. They're trying to do this. They tried to do the same with Deep Sidhu. That didn't work. And now this guy has come from nowhere, apparently from Dubai, and now he has suddenly become the face of this, and most journalists seem to have access to him. I don't know how, and he speaks different things in Punjabi because I understand Punjabi, and I've heard his Punjabi speeches. His speeches are xenophobic. His speeches are racist. They are anti-Hindu when he speaks in Punjabi, but then when he speaks in English, he talks about all those leftist terms like self-determination and all kinds of things. He likens his movement to BLM and all that. So that he has been tutored. Totally, he looks like tutored. But who is funding him? He walks around with a cavalcade. There are people with guns around him, and who is funding Amritpal, and who is funding this revival?
No, of course, like Pakistan may not, but like Terry Molesky has done, how they do. Like, I give you an example how they survive. So this Khalistanis, I'll tell you two things. First, when the case went about Air India bombing, what they basically found was not only were these criminals, all of them were fraudsters. Like, this Khalistanis are like really the worst. Like they have no morality. So now what they do in Gurdwara was, there is a fine documentary by Terry Molesky on YouTube. It's called Sikh Politics in Canada. It was made 15 years ago, but it's still golden. But shows, like, for example, what they do is, like, let's say, like, there is one BJP, one Congress. So they will invite people from both. Come, we are a Baisakhi parade. And in Baisakhi, people come to celebrate Baisakhi. They, so first they capture Gurdwaras through violence. And I can, like I also posted on my Twitter, just in New York, all of Indians in America are 1%. So what would be the Sikhs? What would be the Sikhs in New York? But I showed, not in digital age, but in print age, when it was really hard to come in the news, I have shown this one Gurdwara, which was like on Richmond Street. So many in New York Times. They have killed Sikhs, beaten Sikhs to capture Gurdwara. So first they capture Gurdwara through violence, right? Then they invite people from both parties. There is a Baisakhi parade, and they put like Khalistan posters. They don't know who is there. Like, if you go to some Nigerian parade, you don't know what pictures are there or what not there. Yeah. So now, out of this 4, at least one will win the election. So then they say, okay, you have won the election, we did it, you give us donation. So the government has allocated multicultural fund. And it's not their money that will go to their children. It's like public money. So they don't care. It's like, okay, fine. Like, you bring us the crowd. So they basically say an entire mafia. So this is what so like Canadians, they have completely infiltrated. And, of course, there are people who are just living, they have their, not just idea. Like, either if they are wrong, then they are criminals who basically killed innocents. But no, they are freedom fighters. So they are ideologically invested. And of course, Pakistan is also, for example, if you do referendum, it's a clown show. But the biggest channels of Geo TV would like cover it, like, oh, this is like some big news. So of course, like it's, and with social media, you can just take out, and the government is like, so it's like too many things. It's like, for me, it's always like the locus of responsibility is on us. Like, what are we doing? And we can do a separate episode that this government has blundered from blunder. Yeah. For example, there was this Khalistani terrorist who had killed like hundreds and thousands of people. Mm-hmm. Now, basically, if you want to give amnesty, it's fine. Like, somebody did it in young age who saw like, visuals of Blue Star. If he apologizes, disavows violence, then it's fine. They blanket remove 300 people from the blacklist. Yeah. You remove the deterrent. If you're dealing with a criminal, you increase the deterrent for the crime. They should have put it in no-fly list, that you can't forget coming to India. You can't even fly the Indian airspace. So you tell me, this Khalistan is what, if you see, I am not enemy of Modi, but I don't doubt his intentions are anything less than pure, but they are completely ill-advised. They are working from the first day to reduce the deterrent to act against India. So of course there will be nuisance. Yeah. So you always see what you have done. But again, that doesn't make you very popular. So I just think they have been doing from foolishness to foolishness to foolishness. And this is also what Mrs. Gandhi did. She didn't hate Sikhs. Like, if you see her life, she always risked it, and she had great affection for the Sikhs. Yeah. But she did all kind of these foolish things. Like, for example, she divided Punjab on communal lines. The Punjab Congress leaders were completely against this. They were like, this is completely, we don't support it. You are creating another Pakistan. She's like, no, I know Sikhs. I love them, like, okay. So she did against her state leaders. Then basically when Bhindranwala, it's not the first time, it's the third time he did no Gurdwara. So when he was inviting in like in the complex but separate from the main building. The local chief minister was saying, this Bhindranwala is a thug. You let me, the Punjab police will sort him out in 2 minutes. She's like, no. There'll be a lot of reaction. We can't do this. And he's like, no.
Because initially Mrs. Gandhi was trying to defeat SGPC by propping Bhindranwale.
No.
Cynical politics.
Could be, but I'm just saying, the local leaders, even now, they understand politics, what it is. So it's like, he's living separate from a golden tower, separated by a road. Let the Punjab police work. This is again what the people are saying. Let the Punjab police work, and we take care of this Amritpal who has done whatever. But the police doesn't act. Now he will become bigger. Maybe he also hides in Akal Takht now. So the thing is, she stopped the state government from acting. The state government of Congress was completely clear, we'll sort out this fellow. This is nothing like a lowly thug. But she didn't. No, the Sikh, I don't want to hurt the Sikh sentiments. And what happened? There were wounds that some are still festering, time has healed a lot. True. But again, I also, this narrative that she hated the Sikh is complete nonsense. She actually had, if you see her life and, objectively, I never voted for the Congress. And I'm a student of economics. I think her politics was disastrous on economics. So I'm not her, sycophant. But this narrative that she was against Sikhs is completely nonsense. She actually had great affection for Sikhs. But in this appeasement, she caused the destruction of India and of Punjab and of Sikhs. Yeah. And this is what Mr. Modi is doing.
There is, we are almost at the end of this, and I also have to ask a few questions. A lot of people are asking questions. My phone is buzzing. But I want to ask you a question that has been on my mind for a long time. For a lot of Kashmiri Pandits, we have huge respect and love for Sikh gurus. There's no question about it. And we all know the history and, but there are some people who question this, who say that did a Kashmiri Pandit, there's nowhere in history where it says that, of course it is, we talk about it has gone from generation to generation to generation. I have heard these stories, my mother heard these stories, my grandmother heard these stories, but there is a bunch of people who will say that there is no history of Kashmiri Pandits in persecution, who have been persecuted, going to Sikh gurus and saying, please save us. And gurus did stand up and save us, and we owe our life to them. So, and then there is this whole thing about how Kashmiri Pandits, scholars, and Sikh gurus also collaborated on a lot of things. Could you put a little bit of light on this, and what was the connection of Kashmiri Pandits and Sikh gurus? There are, by the way, a lot of Sikhs in Kashmir, by the way, still. Actually, a lot of Sikhs in Kashmir, they don't speak Punjabi as much as they speak Kashmiri.
Okay, so we are really running out of time, and this is another episode, so I'll be brief.
Just tell me briefly.
So the Kashmiri Pandits, you have to understand, like this Gurmukhi is also derived from the Sharda script. So Kashmir was not like this really rich community that you see now, but it was always the most literate community. And that's why, the gurus were attracting talent from everything. So it was the Kashmiri Pandits who write. So, for example, the teachers of gurus would be Kashmiri Pandits. So, for example, after Guru's death, like the one person who stays in touch, who wrote, Bansavali Nama. Bansavali Nama means Vanshavali, means genealogy. But Dasa Paashaiya ka matlab the 10 kings. That was written by a Kashmiri Pandit, Kesar Singh Chibbar. Then Chopa Singh, he writes Chopa Singh Rahdama. So they are the most, so 1/3 of the contributors to the Granth Sahib are Kashmiri Pandits. But see, the thing is what SGPC have done is they are saying they fought for the Kashmiri Pandits, like we were Sikhs and we fought for Kashmiri Pandits, which is nonsense. So if you read the scriptures, they always say we fought for our dharma. So the Kashmiri Pandits, of course, were facing, and they represented, now, what happened to Kashmiri is now everybody has Twitter, they can see who came to Kashmiri Pandits defend what happened in the 90s, right? And at that time, if you see the persecution starts actually in Punjab earlier than in Kashmir, because Kashmir is a valley, but it is harder to access than Punjab. Yeah. So if you see the dates, so, to travel out of Kashmir was very difficult. And of course, the first gurus, and they had a long association with them, were the Sikh gurus. So the Sikh gurus, and what they say, I already have too many enemies, so I don't. But when I know this person who has posted this nonsense of this. But the thing is, if you want to like degrade somebody, like for example Shivaji Maharaj, if you want to do him, like you can show him in the worst light, because in about any person there are 20 different people who have written with different things. If you want to pick the worst, you can see him like Shivaji as a criminal and Maharana Pratap as the biggest coward, if that's what you want to do, right? So what the source they have done, that person I've never heard, but there is a person called Vishal Agarwal. He also wrote a rebuttal to Wendy Doniger's argument, and he wrote a very very fine article rebutting that. And you can invite him, like in US, if you basically go to like this Hindu schools, he has written their curriculum. So he basically says like this source of like what this comes from Bhatts. This is from Bhatts only, because they were the literate people. And he says, he also wrote him an email, what you have posted is not correct. This is like, like this Kashmiri tradition from which have like, the Kashmiris. And this is part of the trade. And they are not some like, like Haryana SHO that you told him something and he's like, haan, bhai, hota hi hoga. This is the most literal community, But again, if you want to degrade and, like you want to divide people, and that's what you think is dharma, then, God bless you, you will pay for your sins. I am not saying, bad things happen to you, but, there is a karmic cost to what you're doing, and that's very, very wrong. And that's actually Kashmiri sources. And, you just do Vishal Agarwal and, like Guru Tegh Bahadur, and you will get the article. He has basically gone, and Vishal Agarwal is such an honest person. He basically quotes also a source that says the Gurus fought for a separate, Kashmiri dharma. He basically so honest. He also puts like the contrary. And then I kind of like, Vishalji, that source has actually been corrupted by Veer Singh. Here is the evidence. That is vandalized. So, he's such an honest person. So he even said what didn't match his thesis, but what didn't match was actually like forgery by Veer Singh, who basically worked for Singh Sabha and the British.
True. We are almost running. I know you have another event to go to, but I have these. There are a lot of young people who are joining, and they follow you, and they're inspired by you. So they have these questions, and I'm just going to take two because I know we are short of time. It says, you get a lot of threat and hate, and you have to deal with all this, and yet you've come out in open to disrupt the narrative of Khalistani separatists. How do you deal with it?
So two. So, like my parents worked for the government. Everywhere I traveled in India, this turban was respected. And this is what, not just like, like something. The Sikhs earned their respect even despite Punjab terrorism. And, you read Lonely Planet books, like Tourism Guide, they're like, Sikhs are honorable people. So, we got so much for gurus. Like if I can work to save their legacy, so I went with this thing. I didn't know like this would be the cost to my family and my wife and everybody else. But now, Sunanda, I've exposed them so much. Do you think if I shut up, they will leave me alone? They are going to do everything to kill me, like, so they will not stop. So I just have in my hands to die an honorable death. Okay, this is what they say is, I think it's a phase. जिस धक से कोई मकतल को गया वो शान सलामत रहती है, ये जान तो आनी जानी है, इस जान की तो कोई बात नहीं. So like there is nothing in my hand. If I do anything, so at least I have, like, okay, I die with my honor. So when it comes, it comes.
Yeah. There is no, there are a lot of people who stand with you and who stand with the truth, actually, Puneet. So we must all stand with the truth, and anyone who stands with the truth is never alone. At least the gurus are standing with you, and that's a huge support you can get. There's one more question, and that will be the last question that I will take. It says, is there a need for Sikhs in Punjab to launch an organized campaign against the Khalistani agenda and against all this diaspora who have last visited Punjab in probably 1975 and never after that? What is the best way to dismantle this secessionist ideology?
This is what we are doing.
Yeah.
Well, like, Sunanda, I can't tell you like how they destroyed, that's another episode, how they destroyed the scholarship. Punjab, if you read the journal paper of the 70s, you'll be blown away by the intellectual freedom and the quality that was coming out. But then this, monster Bhindanwala came, and now how they went and, destroyed the scholars. I know them because I've read them like what, but now, like they can't do anything. Every day, what the pictures I shared, it's like completely dismantles the SGPC narrative, but they can't do anything. And I have like multiple times more following than any Sikh handle. And I just came after they attacked the tricolor. So I'm saying truth, and that is reaching people. So I think with this technology is a revolution. These are, again, this is when we talked about terrain. and technology. So we have the technology on our side. We should win. We always had the truth. But these people could bully us. They could silence you. But now with social media, like they can't silence me. And I have a reach because what I'm saying has quality. So I'm skeptically optimistic. And Sunanda, if we can play the video, that will also explain. So the thing is, everybody says our gurus are the greatest or whatever tradition. Of course, you do it. But you see, for example, in Hindu, Ram is not called Purnavtar. He's Anshaj Avatar. Yeah. Only Krishna is Purnavtar, right? And you see Krishna is worshipped all over, right? So this is actually from, we talked about Shivaji Maharaj land, Namdev. And this is what, the Guru's done. And you see, like, if any Krishna Bhakt is not melted, this is the legacy and the heritage why we are fighting and why Hindus, despite insults by SGPC, still wants to connect with it. So we just play, a few verses, and then you can see whether it's against Hindus or not. This Shabd by Bhagat Namdev ji, and what Gurus have preserved in the Granth.
Yeah. Can we play the video, please? And then we will end. After that, we'll just do it. Tan tan Mata Dev ki Jai Jai Maiya Kamlavati. Tan tan Mata Dev ki Jai Jai Maiya मधुर मधुर धुन अनहद गाजे मधुर मधुर धुन अनहद गाजे मधुर मधुर धुन अनहद गाजे राम दिन बाजे राम दिन बाजे तन तन को राम दिन बाजे.
You can pause it. So okay. You see.
So explain this Gurbani to us really quickly.
No, this is basically, like it's again, Dhan Dhan Mata Dev ki, Jis Ghar Jamya Kamlapati, like who basically is the consort of Lakshmi that you have born. And you see, like it's not, you don't have to understand. This is what, music touches you. It's like, and this is why, like this Bhakti Ras, that went more popular than all this intellectual movement of Brahmo Samaj and Arya Samaj. So this is, and like anybody, like Krishna Bhakti, you wherever go, as a Krishna Bhakti will go anywhere. But does it have any more? That's why, people connected with the Gurus. Like this is the power, and this is our heritage that I'm trying to save, more than Hindu Sikh. In this Punjab, we suffered the absolute worst. And in all these things, we kind of managed to save this, despite all the constraints. And, if we forego this heritage of our ancestors, who you can't imagine the sacrifice, like just Guru Gobind Singh, he loses his father at 9, right? Then he basically, these are just facts. Then he sees his sons slaughtered, teenagers in front of his eyes. Then he raises his kids, 6 and 9, who forget, except Islam. 6 and 9, you might have kids or nephews. Like they can't suffer for a chocolate. They choose death over Islam. And then, he says Banda Bahadur, who is basically 5-year-old son, there are Britishers there when, like this Banda Bahadur, like Guru inspires him to fight. So they basically take out his heart and put it, and he doesn't, waver. So imagine the sacrifices that we have given, to preserve Dharma. Dharma is only one. And, this is the beauty. And if we let go, so I'm fighting for my spiritual heritage, not for any, I am no interest in politics.
Yeah, truly. It will be a travesty if, this Abrahamization of Sikhi is allowed. We all need to fight for our combined legacy. Thank you, Puneet. Thank you for being with us today. We have talked so much that there are at least 4 or 5 episodes that are already in my mind that we need to talk about individually. And there are a lot of people who are writing to me saying that you're ending this too quickly. But I know you have another commitment, and we will come back, and I request you to come back to our show, and we will talk about all these little, threads that have come out, and we will talk about them. We don't talk unsubstantiated stuff here. We don't talk things that will unnecessarily agitate people. We are talking truth, and we are talking facts. Thank you so much for being on Epicentre, Puneet.
Jai Ma Bharati.
Thank you, everyone, for my viewers who were here. Thank you for being here. If you like what we do here, do share these videos, do subscribe to Epilogue News and Network on YouTube, and do follow us on all our social media handles. I am on Twitter. If there are any questions, do follow us. If there are any writers, thinkers, speakers you would like to hear from, do let me know, and we will invite them, and we'll ask the questions that you want to ask. Thank you so much for being here, and this is Sunanda Vashisht signing off from Epicenter.